So ions. Ions are charged atoms. In a chemical reaction, it's not uncommon for atoms to lose or to gain electrons. And when you have an atom with a charge, then it's called an ion. So ion. There are positive ions and negative ions, and they have names, and we need to understand these names. A cation is a positive ion. So if you like cats, this works. I like cats, except when they pee on my shoes. But generally I have positive feelings for cats. Cations are positive. Anions are negative. So if you're not into the whole cat thing, both of these words end with ion, but anion has an extra N in it. Anion is the negative one. Maybe that would help you. And it's pronounced cation and anion, not cation and anion. Okay. When we have an anion or a cation, we write the charge of the ion in the upper right corner of the symbol. So like if we had an iron ion and it had a +3 charge, we would write the charge as a superscript on the right side of the element symbol. So the symbol for iron is Fe. That would represent an atom. If it has lost 3 electrons, it now has a +3 charge, and so we write 3+. Notice that the number 3 is before the plus sign. That is different than what we do in math. If we have chloride is going to be -1. Chemists don't like the number 1, so we don't write the number 1. Oxide would be O2-. We'll learn why they are that number in a few minutes. But I just want to point out to you that the charge is shown after the number. The charge is always shown, and that's different than math, and I think it's different than math on purpose so that it doesn't look like an exponent. Because if it was O to the -2 power, we would put the minus in front, and so the number comes first. So charges are written with the magnitude first, followed by the sign. So lithium atoms, when they become ions in a chemical reaction, they lose 1 electron. And so we could write that like this, showing the lithium atom, and it becomes a lithium ion with a +1 charge, and it loses an electron. The charge on that ion is going to depend on how many electrons were gained or lost. So the total charge on the ion, I need a different color here. Feeling green today. So the ion charge will equal the number of protons minus the number of electrons. And so this lithium atom, and this is not the number of electrons gained or lost, this is the number of electrons left. So for that lithium atom, we learned last week what the number 3 on the periodic table means. Lithium is number 3, right? That number 3 means that the atom has 3 protons and 3 electrons. So there's 3 pluses and 3 minuses. It's a neutral atom. If it loses 1 electron, now it only has 2 electrons. So it has 3 positive charges. It's not a very good 3. It has 3 positive charges, and it has 2 negative charges. Well, that adds up to +1. Lithium, when it's missing an electron, has a +1 charge. So this can get a little bit confusing because we're talking about losing things with a negative charge. But think about, okay, it started out with an equal number of protons and electrons. If I take one of the negative things away, what I have left is a positively charged ion. If I add more negative things to it, if I add electrons, I'm adding negatives, now it's going to become negative. So however many electrons were gained is the number of negative charges. How many were lost is the number of the positive charge. Any questions yet?
You're recording this, right?
Yes, I am. I had a momentary, oh no, did I press record? Yeah, I did. So in fluorine tends to gain electrons. And so it'll do something like this. Here's the fluorine atom. A fluorine atom, fluorine is number 9. So fluorine has 9 protons and 9 electrons. But in this reaction, it gains an electron. So now it's got 10 electrons. And sometimes for the electron symbol, we put a minus there to remind ourselves that the electrons are negative. And sometimes we put a plus on the proton symbol. So if it's gained a negative charge, now overall it has a -1 charge. So again, the charge is based on the number of protons and the number of electrons. So the fluorine ion has a -1 charge. So determine the charge of each ion. So a nickel ion with 26 electrons. A nickel ion with 26 electrons. Okay, so we know that it has 26 electrons. How do we figure out what the charge is? We need to know how many protons, and we look on the periodic table. So nickel is element number 28. That means it has 28 protons. The protons are positive. So what's the difference between 28 and 26? It's 2. And there's more protons, so this is a +2 charge. So the charge on that ion is going to be +2. If we were going to write the symbol for it, nickel is Ni, and we would write 2+ as a superscript to the right. Question?
The only thing I'm confused on is where the electrons come from.
Where do the electrons come from? Okay, so when fluorine gains one, the electron comes from another atom losing an electron. On the periodic table, we just know that like a nickel, all of these atoms have equal numbers of protons and electrons. So if it's got 28 protons and it's neutral, it must have 28 electrons. That's the normal state for an atom to be neutral. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So let's look at this bromine ion with 36 electrons. So they're telling us 36 electrons. How many protons does a bromine ion have? It's got 35. It's element 35 in the periodic table. So it's got one more negative charge. So this has a 1- charge. And if we're writing the symbol for that ion, we'd put the element symbol and a negative. Not a -1 or not a 1-, because we don't want to write the number 1 unless we absolutely have to. How about phosphorus? Phosphorus ion with 18 electrons. So it's telling us 18 electrons. And phosphorus is element 15. Its atomic number is 15. That means it has 15 protons. Remember, the number of protons is like the soul of the atom. That determines who it is. The electrons are more like the clothing, and you can change your clothes and make yourself look like someone else, but who you are doesn't change inside. The protons are in the nucleus and the inside of the atom, and they do not change. Electrons can come and go. So if we've got 15 positive charges and 18 negative charges, overall then we have a -3 charge. So phosphorus as an ion is going to be P with a 3-. Any questions? It's all in the periodic table. Now, to answer these questions, we're being told the number of electrons, because right now we cannot just look at this like sulfur has 16 protons. Well, the atom has 16 protons and 16 electrons. How many electrons does the ion have? We don't know that yet. Okay? And so right now they're just telling us number of protons. No, I'm sorry, telling us number of electrons. Here's another example. It's funny, it's sulfur. Find the number of protons and electrons in the S2- ion. So this is an anion. It's sulfur. And we can't tell by looking, looking how many electrons it has, but the periodic table is going to tell us how many protons it has. Element number 16, it has 16 protons. The charge is -2. So does it have extra electrons or did it lose electrons? It has extra. And it's got 2 extra, right? So that means it must have 18 electrons. So in those slides earlier, it was giving you this little, formula, protons minus number of electrons. If that works for you, great. I find that it doesn't work for most students. I think, personally, I would prefer to just think about it like we just did. Okay, how many protons? It's got 16 protons. We know that from the periodic table. We look at the overall charge. The overall charge is negative. Electrons are negative. That means it's got some extra electrons. How many? Well, the charge is 2-. It must have 2 extra electrons. Well, the atom itself had the same number of protons and electrons. It started out with 16 of each. It gained 2 electrons, so we just add 2, and we get 18. So 18 electrons, 16 protons. Any questions?